While I was standing over my grill working on another batch of hamburgers and hot dogs, my grandson came up to me. As he stood there, juggling a football in his hands, his curiosity erupted and he started asking me a lot of questions about my time in Vietnam. I thought, why this sudden interest? He said his eighth grade history teacher was explaining to the class the other day the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. He then went on to fire away at me with dozens of pretty good questions. And for a 14-year-old, he seemed pretty eagerly attentive to each of my answers. But the last question he asked got to me. It really got to me. It hit me hard. It made me take a quiet pause and think. I then thought about what that teacher had said to that class about Vietnam being the sad war. For a moment, I just stood there, staring off into the distance. My mind had suddenly flooded with long ago memories. My eyes began to mist over, and I felt my voice weakening. But I turned to answer Manny's question. Yes, Manny, I did lose a very good friend in that war. We were close buddies, and when I think about his sudden loss, it too makes me feel very sad. Sit down over here for a minute and I'll tell you all about him. This friend that I lost was my closest and best of friends, my buddy. You know, kind of like you are with your buddy Sam. And just like you guys, we hung out together a lot. We were good friends. He was a gunship pilot, a Mustang gunship pilot. Me, I was sometimes flying Smoky and many times flying Slick's lead. When I think about him though, you know what I remember the most? How he could tell a story. When he would tell one of his stories, he could keep his listeners entertained, on the edge of their seats. For example, whenever we went over to the Air Force side, to their pilot's bar, he would just razzle-dazzle those Air Force pilots with his macho Army chopper pilot war stories. We would all sit around this huge round table in the bar and drink. And he would tell us stories. He would drink this beer and a Bloody Mary juice mixed in, red beer I think they call it. Anyhow, the round table sat about 14 aviators, and when he spun one of his gunship chopper pilot yarns, those fly boys all decked out in their sharp, decorated flight suits, with purple scarves around their necks, would hang on his each and every word. We always had a good time doing that. Those were fun times. Well, by June of '69, though, we were both getting close to ending our time in Vietnam. It's called being short. I was going to go home first at the end of June, and he was supposed to follow me in a couple of weeks, and we would meet up. But God had other plans. He had only 19 days in a wake-up the morning he was killed. Actually, that morning, it was supposed to be his day off. His first day off in over 2 months. That morning, he was awakened very early, I think around 6 o'clock, and scrambled. There was a special forces camp that was being overrun. He had to get a crew together and get to the flight line and get to those Green Berets quickly. They badly needed gun support if they were going to survive the attack on their A camp. He was doing what he did best. I remember to this day the very moment I was given the news that his ship had been shot down. It was about 8:30 in the morning. Because I was short, I too had the day off. We had gone out to the Air Force Club the night before to blow off some steam. The news of his death was shouted out to me as I was walking downstairs, headed for my morning shave. It was a captain in our unit. He shouted out to me, "Hey Crane, you hear the news? Hawk and his crew bought it this morning. All were killed." His words struck my heart hard. I felt sick in my stomach. My breath quickly shortened. I remember I just stopped in my tracks and slowly sank down to the stairs. I must have sat there for 30 minutes before I could move. Those there could see I was visibly shaken to my core. Later on that day, the CO told me he was grounding me for the duration of my 9 days left in country. He just felt I was too upset and not safe to fly. From that moment on, I got up every morning and watched the top Tigers and Mustangs depart for the day's mission. I would just sit there outside the barracks door alone in a chair, listening to the radio and watching the hooch maids go about their business, polishing boots and doing the laundry. Just sitting there quietly, thinking about what all of this meant. It took me until 2016 to figure out an answer I could live with. But Manny, that's another story for another day. But even 54 years later, I still get emotional when I think about losing my good friend. You could say I get sad when I think about it. And you know, Manny, after hearing what your teacher said about the Vietnam War and his dad, got me to thinking, well, you know, maybe he's right. Maybe the Vietnam War should be thought of in history as the sad war. And you ask, his name? Chief Warrant Officer Glenn S Haukeness Jr, Mustang gunship pilot extraordinaire, known by all his fellow Army aviators as the Hawk. And to his courageous crewmen, lost that same day with him, Chief Warrant Officer Robert A. Williams, his loyal co-pilot, Sergeant Richard D. Baca, his dedicated crew chief, and Specialist for Alan Mike Ruchon, his fierce and deadly door hunter. Courageous Army aviators all of the 68th Assault Helicopter Company, known as the Top Tigers and Mustangs. So, there you have it, Manny. The story about my Vietnam War brother and good friend, Chief Warrant Officer Glenn Haukeness, the Hawk. And when Memorial Day comes around again, say his name and each of the names of his crew members lost with him out loud for everyone to hear. You honor them all and their families when you do. Let these good men who gave all there is to give in loyal service to their country not be forgotten.